Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good day today. So, in this video, we are going to be trying to get Triceratops, and this is gonna be a whole maybe like 30 minutes. I'm not even sure if it's gonna reach 30 minutes, maybe like 10 or 20 minutes video. So, yeah, it's gonna be my longest video yet. So, I hope you enjoy, and let's get onto my journey. So, I originally spawned in Riverside Hills, the biggest hotspot in the game, so I really shouldn't be there. So I migrated all the way to the south of River Valley Forest. Eventually, though, I saw this Pachyrhinosaurus which was eating, and then found this fellow Protoceratops. I chatted with him, I said hello, and he responded back by saying hi. And turns out this Protoceratops and Pachyrhinosaurus were a team, and I joined. And my hunger was also getting low, so I decided to finally eat. I also asked if they were English, but turns out they were Russian and Chinese. Eventually, though, I went under this tree and then laid an egg. But eventually, I said goodbye and went on to migrate to another place. But on my way, I saw this Titanovenator. And when it approached me, I realized it was an AI, meaning it wouldn't attack me. Eventually, though, I continued my journey into the highlands, where I thought it would be a safe path, since there aren't many players and there aren't many AIs. Eventually, I passed Trident Lake and made it all the way to further north of Trident Lake. And I was getting kind of hungry, so I started looking for food. And I also took note that there were some rocks here, and yeah, this would be a perfect place to build a base or nest. Eventually, though, I did find some food, and I happily munched on it. I also found this lake which I drank water from. I then found this nice little hill that I decided I would put my nest in. But now I needed to construct the nest. So I needed stone and some sticks. Eventually, though, I got done gathering all the rocks, and now I just needed the sticks. Which I saw some sticks over there in the grass I found, the shrubs. So I decided to head over there. And yeah, turns out I was right, my memory was right, and I found the shrubs, I mean sticks, and brought them back to my nest. When I finally placed the last stick, my nest was fully built, and I decided to put my egg inside my nest. Then I sat on it to brood it, because brooding makes the egg develop faster, and if the egg is inside the nest, it will also develop faster. After waiting multiple minutes, the egg was finally fully developed, and was finally able to evolve into a Diabloceratops. But this is still not the end of the story, because I still had many, many more evolutions to go before I reached Triceratops, my end goal. But then I started lagging, so I had to log out. And when I finally returned, I was hungry, I was thirsty, and I was out of stamina. So I headed all the way over to the lake and started drinking. Then I headed all the way to the shrubs and then started eating, because I was getting very, very hungry. Eventually, I filled myself up and I headed back to the lake because I was thirsty once again. But then I went back to the shrubs again once I got my thirst sorted out because I wanted to get my nutrition. The higher the nutrition, the better the chances of me getting an evolutionary egg. Eventually, though, I managed to lay an egg, and turns out it is an evolutionary egg because the egg showed that it had two skills, and Diabloceratops only had one. So it's clear that this egg was an evolutionary one. And then I laid down and started brooding my egg. But I had to go, so I decided that I was going to log out for now. When I could play again, I had some issues logging in, so I had to constantly relog, but eventually I was able to fix it, and I was also able to finally evolve into a Styracosaurus. I also changed my energy distribution so that my growth would be maximized. And then I proceeded to just stay in my nest because I didn't want to risk losing everything I've built so far. Eventually, though, I was starting to get really thirsty and hungry, so I went down to the lake to drink. Then I proceeded to go to the shrubs because I needed to eat. But then I noticed there is only two shrubs now. There used to be three, so someone must have been here earlier while I was offline. Then I made my way all the way back to the lake and started drinking again. And I kept doing this cycle where I just cycle between shrubs and the lake to keep on eating and drinking. But this time, as I was heading over to the lake, I saw this Gasosaurus. And I thought he was running away, but his offspring started chasing me, to which I fought back. Eventually, though, I was able to land a charge, which was able to fracture him, and then I killed his offspring. I was also getting very low on stamina. I was in a bad situation here. I was trying to conserve my stamina as much as possible. He could have ran in that moment, but he just came. Eventually, though, I got my drink and headed back for my nest. Once I reached my nest, I put my egg inside and then started brooding. Eventually, though, after several minutes of brooding, it already became morning, so I decided to go down for a drink. But then I realized I needed to get my nutrition up. So I headed over to the shrubs and started eating. And eventually got over 90% nutrition. Then I started looking around these bushes looking for the Gasosaurus from earlier, because I wanted no threats, and I did find him. He was eating an anthill, his dead offspring, and yeah, I predicted his movement and managed to fracture him, which, yeah, that basically sealed his fate. And after killing him, I started drinking. I also came to a realization that the body might attract other carnivores, so I picked the body up and wanted to put it somewhere far away so that it wasn't near my nest. Eventually, I made it to I'm not really sure, east or west of Trident Lake, I think east of Trident Lake, and yeah, I just put the body inside of a bush and just left. I then headed to the shrubs to bring back my nutrition up, and then laid an egg. I put it back in my nest and started brooding all over again. However, I didn't even need to wait that long because my first egg was already an evolutionary egg, which allowed me to evolve into a Pachyrhinosaurus. Usually after evolving, I would usually roar, but I heard a large carnivore earlier, so this time I'm not roaring. I'm not broadcasting my location this time. After multiple minutes of just laying down in my nest, I was really starting to get hungry and thirsty, and that nightfall was falling upon me. So I finally went down to the lake to drink. The area seemed clear enough, so I took a drink. After getting my thirst filled up, I headed all the way to the shrubs and started repeating the cycle of me going back and forth from the lake to the shrubs. Eventually, though, I headed back to my nest and realized that I was already an adult and my nutrition was at 99%, so I decided to lay an egg and put it in my nest to brood. Even after several minutes and the sun rising, the egg was still not even half developed. So this was clearly gonna take a while. Eventually, it was pretty much fully daytime now, and I decided to go down and eat. I then started checking these bushes again to see if that Gasosaurus earlier had respawned into another dinosaur because I did not want any threats or competition in my area. But I found no one, and so I just headed back to the lake and started drinking. I kept brooding for several more minutes. And even after all of that, well, like 20 minutes now of brooding, it was still just, 85%, 86%. But then it was finally fully developed, and when I checked my menu, it's another Pachyrhinosaurus, not a Triceratops. So yeah, I had bad luck on that one. I headed all the way back down and got my nutrition up so that I could lay an egg. And now all I can hope is for this egg to be an evolutionary egg. I headed back to my nest with no issues and started brooding. But I didn't brood for long because I had to go and log out. And when I got back online, I was absolutely thrilled to see that my egg was actually a Triceratops egg. After so long, I got a Triceratops. And after evolving, I decided to roar. But turns out I thought I was invincible because I started going down the hill, even if I'm just a 10% growth Triceratops that can easily be killed. And would you look at that? Look how far I'm going from my nest, from my hill. I'm literally going into the open, like I've lost all survival instinct or something. Now, my logic here was, cause since I haven't actually logged online since for 2 days or something, so every day the server usually resets the spawn points of grass and all that stuff. So I thought maybe some grass or shrubs spawned near my nest that was easier to access or something like that. But it did turn out that the shrubs spawned somewhere else, but it was still in highland, so it didn't spawn far away from the last time I logged. Eventually, I started filling up my stomach while the sun was rising. And I headed back to the lake because my thirst, as you can see there on the bottom, it was getting very low, not gonna lie. I did also check, and I was already at 30% growth, which means I was now adolescent. And then I sprinted all the way back to Highlands because my my hunger was somehow already halfway down. And yeah, look at that. I just grew while I was eating. And when I checked, I was at 39% growth, which means I was about to hit subadult. Now, nothing really happened much, and I just kept going back and forth between the lake and highlands to get to eat some shrubs. And yeah, nothing really happened. Except that I decided to take a swim, which, speaking of swimming, I'm hoping that the devs add a crocodile to the game so that we can play as a Deinosuchus or a Sarcosuchus or whatever. But yeah, the main point is that I just kept going back and forth between lake and highlands and just eating and drinking. That's basically all I was doing. That was until I finally reached adulthood and I could finally lay an egg. I reached my nest with no problems and I put my egg onto the nest. And I kid you not, I literally brooded this egg for what seemed like 15 minutes. And even when it reached midnight, the egg was only still at like, what, 50% developed. No, 30, 40%. 40%, roughly 40%. And I got bored of brooding, so I decided to go down to highlands and just ate some shrubs. And yes, of course, to drink at the lake because my thirst was getting a bit too low. But then I decided I wanted to go to Riverside Hills, the biggest hotspot in the entire game, and yeah, I wanted to go there. And so I started migrating. I eventually exited Highlands from Highlands and into Riverside Valley. And from there I started climbing the mountains into gale swept I forgot the name, but it was something like Gale or something. Gale swept snowfield. Yeah. And literally half of my journey was here in the mountains. And I didn't even encounter anything interesting. I didn't even encounter AI, which, by the way, a lot of AIs spawn here in Gale-swept Snowfield. If you guys ever want some tips on how to find AI, then you should probably go here, because it's a hotspot for AI. Eventually, though, I managed to reach all the way to Riverside Hills. But this also marks the end of my journey, at least for this video. Reached my goal of becoming an adult Triceratops, but dominating the server comes for another video.